Hello, everyone. It is a beautiful day to be at the Beautiful Dying Expo. And how lucky am I to be here with my friend Patch. Hello, Patch.
Hello.
How are you? How are you
And
today?
it's funny with this expo, I should say I'm dying because no one is living forever. And at 76, at some point in the next 50 years, I'll die.
And I want it to be at least 50 years, actually, Patch. I think you need to stick around that long. We need you. We love you.
Well, as long as I have a thought, I'm living.
You are living, and you know how much I have just loved. I love that mustache, the way it does that. Fabulous. I love everything about you. I love how many people you have made laugh, smile, brought joy to them on their hardest day when they were suffering, when they were dying, and you never shied away from doing that. Not because you thought, I'm going to cure this, I'm going to fix it, but because you weren't afraid to be there, Patch. And I love you so much for that. How many people, I know you can't really count. How many bedsides of dying people have you been present at?
Well, I mean, part of it is that a certain number of them think they're dying and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to say many thousands.
Many thousands. Well, I know that you have done clowning around the world to in so many different countries, orphanages, war-torn, war zones, and yes, and your beautiful long ponytail. When is the last time you had a haircut?
I think 1967.
1967. Well, that's awesome. Well, I cut my hair every 3 weeks because now I'm a silver-haired fox. Did you notice? I'm very silver, and I am going to celebrate that because guess what? I am 56 years old. And isn't it so funny when people say, "Ooh, I don't want to ask their age. That's rude." I think, don't you want to just celebrate your age? Isn't it so wonderful to be whatever age we are?
Well, I think the complexity, Yvonne, is that in my 50 some years in medicine, that no more than 10% of people are loving life. That the number one prescribed medicines are antidepressants. And I don't believe depression is an illness. I think it's a symptom of loneliness.
In a world of over 7 billion people.
Yes, and that's fascinating to me that anyone is lonely. I mean, you can have a tree for a friend.
I will hug a tree.
I'm going to guess that maybe more people have a pet for a close friend than a human.
Absolutely. I actually now have 3. We have a rescue dog, Sadie, and kittens, and our house is full of joy. And you're so right. And it really is about living life to the fullest now. And
But I think, Yvonne, that most people have no idea what they're living their life to the fullest would look like.
That's so true. It's so true. And I think that you're so right. If we can pause and say, okay, what does that mean to me? And see, for me, and I know for you, living my life fully is truly bringing joy to others and making them laugh even on their hardest day or making them smile. I think we really complicate the whole process. I think we complicate life, we complicate grief, and we complicate death, actually.
Well, and I think that the majority of US citizens don't love themselves.
You're so right.
And
We're
so
too hard on ourselves.
they're hard on themselves. And so the idea that they would be exuberant someday and just say, wow, isn't life great? I know huge numbers of people that have never said that.
You're so right. And if we want to know what living life to the fullest means, I think it has to start with accepting who we are, how we are, flaws, warts, imperfections, All of it.
Well, I would add to that making who they are.
I like it.
I make me.
You
I
do make.
decided at 18 to never have another bad day, and I'm now 76.
Yes.
And so I decided to be 6 qualities:
Yes.
happy, funny, loving, cooperative, creative, and thoughtful all the time. And I think I have done that for 58 years. And when people ask me, how do you do it? I say, I make me. Okay. And they say, well, I wish I could. And I point out to them, if you didn't make you, you would be run over one of those times you stood at the curb and the whizzing cars that go past, you would just say, well, I'm going to step into it. But you don't. You say, I'm going to wait. And so I actually think anyone could make the decision to love life. It's just that if the TV or the growing up, it meant that they had a Cadillac instead of a Volkswagen, or they had a big fat diamond ring, even if they're divorced. And so that the influence of the world on a person defines them unless they are deciding to define themselves. And that's what I think this is all about, that I define myself as happy, funny, loving, and that's who I am, even if a horrible day happens. That my life, I've probably been at 10,000 deathbeds as a clown. How many children have I held that are dying of starvation or dying of cancer? And so gratitude isn't a tiny little thing. Oh, I'm glad I've got a clean shirt. It's a gigantic way of being. Like that big word behind your head.
And that's why it's there, Patch, because you're just speaking right to my heart. And do you know how many, you're so right, because we give our power away when we say, oh, that person makes me happy, this situation makes me angry, that thing makes me sad. We make us. No one can make us anything. We make us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the first option is anyone can make themselves. They can't make themselves rich or beautiful or those sort of things, except as they define it.
Exactly.
But however, they can make their day. They can look at these trees behind me. This is Gesundheit. This is one of the buildings of Gesundheit.
Yes, it's beautiful.
The dacha. And that it's so funny, in growing up, we read Dick and Jane, but we don't really know it's about us. And we, in school, I was exposed to a lot of great literature, great music, great ideas. And it was always taught as if this was part of somebody else. And that we are just commoners, or we are just, and that these are the special people and these are the unspecial people. And you're only unspecial if you define yourself as unspecial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've all known the person who radiates joy and laughter and lights up a room, and they may not have money, they may not have fame, but they are choosing, and so they just have that light, and we can bring that, we can turn our light up, right? And that's exactly, when I come to this, I wear silly earrings and I wear a bright shirt, and I choose to see these words Even on my sad day, I want to see these words and I will allow my tears, and then I will feed my soul and I will be in charge of me. And it has nothing to do with fame, fortune, or anything else. But I know that I can make a difference. I make a difference when I know that there's something's like, especially in this time, it's a challenging time, and I see people and they're driving, they're like, "Arr." And so I go for a little jog. It's not very fast, but I call it a jog. And I go like this, every car going by. And guess what? I make myself laugh. And I bet you I made someone laugh, even if they said, there's that weird lady again. It didn't cost me anything. It made me laugh, and I know I made somebody laugh.
What's funny is that the person that says there's that weird lady being happy, when they see a person miserable, they don't say there's that weird person being miserable.
It's true. It's true. That's right.
So there's all this emphasis on badness, and that goodness is for the special few.
Well, and it takes voices like this and conversations like this to change that and say, well, what can we do to change that? And that's why I so appreciate you being such a bright, wonderful light in the world. I mean, look at your shirt. Look at Shakespeare. He has a red nose on him. And I love that. And you have worn your clown noses all over the world and made someone, you sat with people, you opened your heart, held their hand on their hardest day when people were dying. And it's so interesting because when people, end of life, dying, it has to be so serious. It's already serious enough. I'm going to tell you right now, if there's laughter and joy in the room as I am dying, I will say thank you. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
I believe you can't know you're dead. So you're always living. You're living, 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 living. And it's not that you're going, oh, I just died. Oh, well, I'll go to heaven or whatever. But you can, in my world, you can only know living. So how are you living?
Well, that's always the question. And when people are with their loved ones, and we know there's tremendous suffering because when someone we love is dying, we are grieving that physical, they're no longer going to be in our lives. And I so want us to have these conversations before and know that we can help to create a good death, a good departure for our loved one. And there's nothing wrong with bringing heart and humor to it. I worked in the chemotherapy clinic for 15 years, and I was thinking of some of my favorite moments. And, like I said, sometimes people said, there's that nurse, she's really out there. My friend Bob had a bald head, and it was March, and it was St. Patrick's Day. And I said, Bob, I should draw a 4-leaf clover on your head. and he said, go ahead. And of course, nobody thought I would do it. Of course I did it. I drew the biggest 4-leaf clover on his head, and everybody smiled. Was it already serious enough? Yes, of course. We're nearing end of life. And those are the things we can do in living and in accompanying someone in their dying process. And so, Patch, I know you have a million, so many stories. Can you share a story in a hard situation? Like you've been with children who are dying of starvation. I mean, it does not get more heart-wrenching than that for anyone. And yet you were able to bring them joy, right?
Thousands upon thousands of times. Because they're living.
Yes.
And even if it's their last day of living, they're living.
Yes.
And even if they died while you're speaking to them, they were living up until that moment. And then it's very clear they're not there.
Right.
And what a privilege it is to be there in those moments. I love them, and I think I take advantage of the fact that they make a big deal that I'm there, and it actually is a mutual admiration society, that we are enjoying ourselves. I mean, imagine lying there in your bed with a cancer and that you're being told you're going to die soon. And everyone in your family and friends that come visit you go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh golly, oh, you must feel so horrible dying." And what the hell do they think that's doing for the person?
They don't know what else to do, right? They don't know what else to do. And that's why we have to help people do
Give
it
them a
differently.
whoopee cushion.
Yes.
Because when in doubt, fart.
Well, you know what? We all do it. And I love that you say that, because that's when people talk about dying with dignity. Many people think that means, oh, I have to control my bodily functions. Well, that's not going to happen. So we might as well just let it happen, have a little chuckle, laugh about it, and carry on, because it's going to happen. And I remember one beautiful dying woman who said she was so afraid and she didn't want her friend to leave her side, and her friend just wanted to go have a shower. And I just looked at her, instead of, being all heavy and serious, I just said, "Can you please let your friend have a shower? Have you seen her hair? It's like this." And then we all laughed. We don't have to, it's already serious enough, isn't it? It's already serious enough.
Oh, I mean, I find it fascinating that the number one prescribed medicines are antidepressants. And I think I've said that for me, depression is never an illness. It is a symptom of loneliness. That if you're with a friend or thinking of a friend, and they don't even have to be alive, that's what's so great. I mean, your thinking can bring everything back in your head that has passed or has gone to another country or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can be with them. You can set up a little altar in your house and have the pictures of all the people that live in another country there, and you can have your moment from 3 to 3:05 with them, where you party with them every day.
I love that. Rituals that feed our heart and our soul. And we have that, and we have that capability. And, when you talk about the loneliness, when people are grieving or dying, there is often tremendous loneliness in that, because people stay away because they don't know what to do or say. And I say, my whole thing, just show up. Just show up and just love them through it, and be okay with not knowing what to say. Sit and sing a song.
Yes, I find it fascinating that humanity, at least in the Western world and the United States, that they think the goal is to marry a person you love, stay loving, have children, when I have found no more than 10% of the couples I've been with are in love with each other, and yet they stay with each other so often. And the thing is, we are not nuclear family animals. We are tribal animals. The gorillas, the chimpanzees, the baboons, they live in community. And so,
absolutely,
that for me, the minimum number of adults you could be living with is 20. And so you have X number of women to play with, X number of men to play with. You have this person that you discuss Dostoevsky with, and this person that you discuss Elmer Fudd to, and that they're that that group and community life is so much cheaper than the nuclear family life. That if you divide your rent into 20 versus dividing it into 2, it's a very different rent. And
but yeah, that's it's such an important point, because you also, in talking about millions and millions and millions of people who feel like they're in silos of isolation and loneliness, and the happiest communities in the world, as I saw in a documentary called Happy, are the community, or are the places that live in community. Because it's true that the single mom, or the mom who has a new baby, or someone who is caregiving for an elderly parent, or someone who is in the dying process, or someone who has a chronic illness, when you live in community and you have your village taking care of one another, looking out for one another, bringing joy and laughter to one another, I think that is a beautiful way to live. And we need to get back to that community, and we need to get back to normalizing living, grieving, dying, and bringing it back to community, right? Bringing it back, because we have also sanitized our society with, we push away, like when people are elderly, they go live somewhere else. When people are dying, they go over here. When people are sick, they go to the intensive care. We need to get back to that sense of community, and bringing that throughout our lives. And we used to celebrate, right? I'm very independent. I don't need any help. Well, we all need to have excessive happiness, to have excessive joy and laughter, and different people to have conversation with, and different interests. How extraordinary, how wonderful to be able to do that.
And
I
this
love
other
that.
thing, the living by yourself or living as a couple, takes up a lot of the beautiful nature, that we just eat up nature. And
So
you can
true.
see houses that look like they could hold 40 people for 2 people. And
Oh,
and for them, you could say that house that could hold 40 people, that's there for 2 people, is simply an ostentatious showing of wealth and how successful they are, when inside, the number of playmates you have is the strongest affirmation of your life.
absolutely. And I love that. And just so you know, I live in a plain old regular bungalow in a regular cute little neighborhood, and I love it. I love it. And when I think of, like you said, when I think of the message of the beautiful Dying Expo, and how they are bringing so many people to normalize these conversations throughout life, I think it is so important to remember and bring that message that we can bring heart and humor and laughter and joy wherever we go, no matter what we are facing. And I believe that getting back to that sense of real community is so important. It's the key, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly one of them. I haven't found one grade school, K through 12, in the world, and I have lectured and performed in 82 countries in every state. I haven't found any public school that teaches 1 hour K through 12 on loving. How is it that it's not a class every year? And I think a lot of it is because the teachers don't know much about it.
You can't teach what you don't know.
You can't teach what you don't know. And I mean, it's so interesting to talk with wealthy people about love and how different the conversation than to talk with poor people about love, and to talk to men about love and women about love. Those are very different conversations. And you add to that conversations of death, if it was, imagine from the time we're born till the time we die. I wrote a paper called Fun Death. Yeah. And right now, and this conference kind of implies it, that we're trying to change the idea about what death is.
Absolutely.
Knowing that death has a lot of bad publicity.
Oh, it certainly does. It certainly does. And that's what I mean. I love that they say the Beautiful Dying Expo. And I wrote my book, Love Your Life to Death. Let's talk about it. Let's bring joy and laughter and humor throughout and normalize the conversations. Patch, wouldn't it be so wonderful if we, like you said, from JK, we have junior kindergarten here in Canada, right through grade 12, we talked about loving, we talked about heart and humor, we talked about death as a normal part of this life's journey, not taboo, something to be avoided at all costs.
I've sometimes imagined, as soon as somebody dies, they go get buried 6 feet under or cremated, and then they have a little tub of the ashes of the person. Mm-hmm. It might be fun to have a cemetery where everyone is in a test tube. They're in some kind of liquid that they can stay dead in.
Yeah.
And not decay.
Yeah.
And you could just go and visit them and hang out with them right there in the test tube. And I've often tried to say, well, Patch, think of a graveyard with 1,000 test tubes in it. And I can easily see myself visiting such a graveyard.
Oh, I'm sure you would.
A graveyard is a pretty boring place to visit.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to a specific grave that has somebody that has a memory with you. Mm-hmm. But when you drive by a graveyard and you see all of those, some of them are very expensive stones. Some of them are very small, little name-only stones. And if they were all people, I mean, if it were my graveyard, they would be naked people in a test tube with the same way kind of samples in your lab in your biology advanced class had animals in test tubes. That here would be, there's Aunt Mary, isn't she? Good to see you, Mary. And what you could do is that clever people could have Mary, they could give Mary 100 questions and then put them in a recording of her voice. So you could go up to Mary in the test tube and say, how's it going, Mary? And you could hear, oh, everything is so fine. I just love today. Don't you like the birds chirping? And you could push another button, go, that damn husband is remarried. And I mean, you could have a lot more fun with it than we're having.
Well, and only you would come up with that, Patch, but I think you're absolutely right. We could do so much more, and these conversations are needed to say, how can we do death differently? And so on that note, I love you, and I always just love our conversations. I'm delighted that we're here at the Beautiful Dying Expo. I can't wait to hear everybody else. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And to my amazing friend, Patch, I love you so much. And yes, we'll see you on the flip side.
To my amazing friend, Yvonne,
Mwah,
go
mwah.
have fun with these dying people later.
Absolutely.